and I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't a take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
It is hard to be calm when it is American Thanksgiving, Tyler, and the Vancouver Canucks are sitting point-wise, second place, point percentage-wise, third place in the Pacific Division, which would be the first time for playoffs, an impossible home game of playoffs since 2015. So it's hard to feel calm about that. But welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as the Area 51 Sports Network. Talked Flames earlier. So we're not only does the NFL do double and triple headers, folks, Shifts and Pucks also do American Thanksgiving double headers, except we don't name our events after John Madden. But we did Flames earlier. Dan and I had a chat, but now we're talking Canucks with Tyler, Sean. Happy American Thanksgiving if that is something you celebrate. How are you all? What is going on?
Yeah, nice to see you guys. Happy Thanksgiving, of course, to everyone in the United States tonight and those elsewhere who are celebrating it, as you mentioned. Yeah, doing all right. Just woke up from a nap, though. We had 10-15 rec league puck last night, and it actually started late, and then it dragged on for a while. So, yeah, it kind of throws the rest of the week for a loop when we have those super late ones, and we didn't win. So that's even
all
better.
that for nothing.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
yes. Happy Thursday to all of us in Canada, and happy Thanksgiving to all those in the States.
Yes.
Fair. I always take American Thanksgiving off, not because I'm an American. It is mostly because of the football, but
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got the Canucks, as mentioned, second points wise in the Pacific Division and third points percentage wise with here we're in the Pacific Division, which does put them in a playoff position. But this last few weeks or last few games have been a bit not the start same as the start. There are a few things going on, but the Flames, pardon me if I said that, Canucks lose to the Kraken on Saturday. They come back after that 2-game losing streak, recover against the Sharks, and then lose against the Avalanche. We'll start. Let's start with I started this with Dan. What is your opinion on the American Thanksgiving standing theory? Depending on where it is, depending on who you talk to, 70% of the teams that are actually in the playoffs now will stay in the playoffs by the end of the regular season. Are you buying this, or are you wait and see? Where are you all at this?
Sean?
I mean, what's not to buy? It's an actual stat.
But there, where I would have some I think that's important context is there was with these stats. We've had expansion, so we're now at 32 teams, and we were at one point in our long history 21. I guess for me, why I asked the question is, do you buy it? Because I feel like sometimes I wonder if this is a little bit overrated and a little bit, some teams haven't even played 20 games yet. Do we really know what they are?
Yeah,
You
I
know what
think
I mean?
I mean I get what you're saying. I think it's still a pretty in very loose terms a good a good time to take the pulse check on where every team is at. But yeah, certainly things have changed with the league expanding and the way the schedule is done now, with teams getting bye weeks in there. The season's also starting a little bit later now, ever since the new U.S. contracts have kicked in. So it's not a hard and fast thing. You know, you really have to look at the games played column and the points percentage and how things are trending, strength of schedule, all of that. But you know, if you're near the bottom at this point in time, there are very few examples of teams that have turned around and made it. Obviously, the 2019 St. Louis Blues are kind of like that one example everybody holds up. You know, I think they were like dead last in January, I think, and turned it around and became Stanley Cup champions. But that's very, you know, that's an anomaly. That's very unusual to see that. Uh, yeah, I think you got to as a fan, you got to be feeling pretty comfortable with where your team is at. If it's like it is this year with the Canucks at this point in time, American Thanksgiving, but it is just like I say, a bit of a pulse check. It's you know nothing certain out there. You know, injuries, a couple of key ones, a couple of losing streaks can really change things in a hurry.
Yeah, and I think how you said it there, Tyler. It's a pulse check. It's just it's a milestone. It's a no a milestone, mile marker. Where are you compared to where you thought you wanted to be? Like you look at the Oilers. Like, do you
Yeah.
think they feel good? Like
No.
it's I think the best way to say it. It's a mile marker. It's a pulse check. It's sort of just 70%. Like there's still 30% of the teams that don't make it, and then that's still a decent amount, right? So it's not like you're guaranteed to get in. So I think it's a nice. Also, at this point, it's talking points, right? Where they're at, and at this point in time, the last couple seasons for the Canucks, we were already arguing about tanking and rebuilding, and I mean, talking about what Kevin probably talked about in the afternoon about the Flames. Like, it's not fun, right? So, like, I think it's if you're above the marker, the playoff. You're in the playoffs by this time. It feels good, and with the stats showing out that 70% of the time you're going to at least make the playoffs, you got to feel good about yourself. Yeah, you can't sit on your laurels,
No.
but yeah, I think you got to feel good about yourself. And if you're not, then you got to figure out what's going on and figure out if there's any moves you can make. Because I think a lot of it is sort of maybe 20 games or American Thanksgiving or thereabouts, you start seeing teams start to think about making moves. Unless you're a team that's completely gone off on one, like either completely, I would say completely gone off the deep end and not played well. Like the Oilers, they've already made a couple big moves. Usually, you don't see a coaching change before the American Thanksgiving. But this is the time where you start seeing changes like that in trades, or at least you see the trade talk start to ramp up. And I think that's why we have this as a mile marker and a talking point.
Yeah, everybody's keeping their cards pretty close to the chest early on in the season. They're not, because there's so much season left, there's reluctance to make rash moves. As teams now have reached this number of games played, you'll start to see the willingness to make deals sort of, that'll loosen up a bit with everybody. And you never know when a transaction may occur.
Yeah, and I mean, Ryan Rishaug tweeted today that about the Oilers have basically putting everything that they possibly could on the table for a trade to get something, anything to help them. Like, so it's feeling like desperation times in Edmonton. You look at the situation in Calgary with all of the free agents and the decisions that they still have to make whilst in a playoff spot. kind of look at Devin's team, Toronto, and you have to wonder what they are going to have to do on the blue line. They put John Klingberg, not that he was outstanding in any way, shape, or form, but he's on LTIR. They need some depth, and I think they have some questions in goal as well. So there's a lot of things that are going on. And you look at, we toss this over to the Canucks. A couple of big injuries here from the guys that they signed in the offseason. You've got Carson Soucy out, and Pius Suter is also out as well. And those look like possibly lengthier injuries. Suter's not on the road trip, and Soucy, it's now week to week as well. And the Canucks, as mentioned, in a playoff spot. I mean, do you? I guess let's talk about the impact of the injuries, which to me, Suter, I don't think that people realize how important. Well, for me, Pius Suter is a guy that you can play all over the lineup, and I think that is a significant loss. And I think it's been very fortunate for the Canucks that the depth of and the acquisition of Sam Lafferty for that very horrendous steep price of a 5th-round draft pick in 2024.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Thank you, Brad, for living.
Yeah. And one of the more improved players, I think, on the forward group, Niels Höglander, has kind of stepped up to kind of cover up for that. But Carson Soucy, and this, I am concerned about the Canucks' depth at defense going forward. I mean, it's been good, don't get me wrong, but Friedman has his battles with injuries and getting hurt. He left yesterday, Tyler, after the Colorado game, and I know Tyler wanted to talk a little bit about the games, and Tyler Myers, I think, left yesterday as well. So there's some injury concerns on that Canuck bull line that, that are worrisome in some ways.
Well, I think, any one of them going down is a concern. We talked before the season of wondering about how well this Vancouver Canucks defense would perform, and I think we're seeing better than expected. Obviously, Quinn Hughes and the just the tear that he's been on this year has certainly helped. But so yes, that is a concern. It becomes a trickle down effect. How do the pairings change? Same as the forward lines. I agree with you. Kevin Suter has been a very important piece for the Canucks and has been productive. So when he goes out, then what happens? I think the other thing too for the Canucks, they got off to that hot start there. They were grabbing a lot of attention across the league. And then now you start to see teams sort of strategize around how do we contain the Canucks, and so there is that sort of regression to the mean or whatever term you want to use, but it is going to get tougher just because of the Canucks' own success, kind of grabbing everybody's attention. So we're seeing more of that, and then of course Colorado's a strong team. They lost last night. It was a game lacking flow that had a lot of penalties called. It was just an odd game, a road game. Are we that surprised that they didn't win? That's a stronger team. At least they're getting the job done against the weaker teams this year, and that's always been a thing. That's been a problem for the Canucks historically.
The Canucks started the season without Soucy as well, so I think they have shown that they can win without him, and he's an important piece of that blue line, but he's not. It's not like they're going to be at a loss without him too much, right? So I think a lot of this is it's less about the injuries. It's just more about a lot of the things that Tyler said. Teams are now game planning differently for the Canucks. Some of the bounces aren't going their way, but they're still playing their system for the most part. I think they were. The score was 5-2, but it was a lot closer of a game last night against Colorado than that. And I think they were right there with the Avs. It wasn't that. Like I said, 5-2 was not an indicative score of the balance of play, in my opinion. And they're still learning. There's still a lot of learning for this team to have. And the fact that they're right, I think they're close enough to with a top team like Colorado that's promising for me. And I think they were tired and weren't able to play the game, the style of game that they want to against the Flames and the Kraken. But they got the result against the Sharks. They were close against Colorado, and now the schedule, while there are some tough games, I think loosens up in terms of timing a little bit for the Canucks going forward. So that should help them. And losing Pia Suter is, yeah, it sucks because that third line has been a nice bonus for the Canucks. But Teddy Bluger's been pretty solid in that role, taking over for Suter since he came back as well. So it's not like Suter came out and then that third line went off and became irrelevant. But if they can get Bluger and Suter in the lineup together, that's going to go a long way. Because one thing I did think about while watching the Canucks Navs last night was I really like how this forward group is set up. You've got a couple strong offensive lines, and you got a good bottom six that can grind it out, aren't afraid to throw their bodies around, aren't afraid to get dirty, and aren't afraid to go to the hard areas, and are putting up points and contributing that way as well every once in a while, which is what you want.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, if the Canucks can find a way to get healthy, get Susie back, and then still find a way to get a top four defenseman, that's going to go a long way to helping sort of solidify this team and help them take the next step. Because I really think while watching this that Tocchet is the right coach for this team, and is the right coach for a couple specific players. We'll get into that in a little bit later. But yeah, I just think it's you're starting to see the Alvin vision. You're starting to see what he was trying to build when he took over through the end of last season, last summer, and then through this summer and into this season. It's starting to show what he was trying to do, and I think it's going to be it's going to have success. I don't know how much success, but it's going to have success if they continue on with this course and are patient and are continuing to build through that process and patiently, because you can't rush it. You can't just we've had a great start and then start trading off prospects and picks that you're big prospects and picks that you're trying just for this season. No, you've got to start building for not only this season and growing. You got to grow from this season. So I think that's what Alvin's going to be doing. So I think it's looked good so far, despite the little hiccups that we've seen lately.
Well, that Colorado game also had a lot of emotion to it as well. It's one of their first games. I mean, the Oiler games were emotional, I think, too. But this is going to start to get a little bit emotional and a little bit more intense as the season goes on when you're playing these teams. I mean, I think that the Vegas, Vancouver, that will be emotional. Kings and Canucks will be emotional as well. And I think you have to learn how to play through that in order to be successful. So, do I see a call? Yeah, I'm with you, Sean. I don't see it. It's about the long term, and So, and just kind of developing that. But I do think it's important to. I think the other thing that I would point out too is these depth pieces that I think a lot of people rolled their eyes out about giving. Ring of Honor candidates 5th round pick of 2024 and 4th round pick of also 2025, I believe, for Casey DeSmith. These depth pieces are important as well. And I think one unsung hero to mention here is the fact that you can play Casey DeSmith in games means that you could keep Thatcher Demko upright for a longer time in this season, and he may not have to play as many games as we thought during the season, which could be a bonus going down the stretch in terms of getting into the playoffs. And I think that is huge for the Canucks. And with the goaltending depth and the goaltending the way it is around the National Hockey League, you truly do need two goalies, I think. And I think what Casey DeSmith has done just to add to what's going on here, I think has been significant as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, he's the we'll see if Demko were to go down to injury and Smith had to play for a longer period of time, we're probably having a different discussion about this. But in this backup role, he's been probably better than advertised.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
So I guess, was there anything about these last two games, anything else within these last two games that you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, the Sharks game in particular, I wanted to talk about just because when we look back on the season and all the different things that have happened, all the changes, this new identity that we're seeing from the Canucks, when we talk about culture, coaching change, Quinn Hughes is the captain. Boy, when he just took over the game there on that one shift and has scored that beauty shorthanded goal. I mean, to me, to this point in time, yes, it is a weaker opponent and everything, but it almost makes this to me the moment more significant. That's a game the Canucks just if they're going to be serious about contending, that is a game they got to win. And when things were headed for the cliff there a little bit, I think that was right after I don't know when it was relative to the Hoglander 5-minute match penalty for slew footing, but he just took over the game, just an outstanding professional shot, and really put his stamp not only on that game, but maybe the entire season with in terms of him being the right guy to be the captain of that team. And I just wanted to get that in since I haven't been on since in a while here, and flag that one for later. That's the kind of moment where, boy, did they ever get that choice right, and just how confident the guy seems to be playing ever since he's been named the captain. I mean, it was amazing. And then I did put on our agenda, I don't know if we want to get into it now, but the whole reviewing penalties with video thing, I don't know when you want to get into that, but I've got some commentary on that, and that came out of that game as well.
Well, just to stick with the Hughes part, and kind of stick with some of the debate that happened this week. I personally, if I had a vote for, and far too early, I have Quinn Hughes as both my Norris and my Hart Trophy winner. I think he gets both at this point. And I think he's had a phenomenal year, and I think he's taken a lot of huge steps. That being said, this whole debate with Cale Makar this week in both fan bases, I just kind of wanted to go like this. Here's the thing, and I also stand by this, and I don't care, Oiler fans, what you have to say about this. I've said it for 2 years. I'm going to continue to say it until I'm blue in the face. Cale Makar is the best hockey player in the world, and I'm going to step this one more further. He's created a far further distance to the second best hockey player in the world right now, named McDavid, and I may even argue that Quinn Hughes has passed Connor McDavid in this conversation right now. And there's a legitimate conversation that the two best players in the world are playing on the blue line. Anyway, but my point is...
Just to reinforce your point, I mean, you've been kind of on this for years now, it seems like, and I don't disagree with it. Cale Makar, ever since he's come into the league, has really made an impact, and he hasn't fallen off that much at any point from consideration for being one of the top players, if not the best player in the league, and we saw that on display last night.
Yeah, what he did there with that breakaway goal, that's something else, right? That is all elite level. That being said,
the defensive play to strip the puck off of JT Miller, and then to just the acceleration to get that breakaway, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah. That being said, I get that we want our guy to feel like he's the best. And I get that, we want the other guy to feel like he's not the best. Like, we have that rivalry, and it's kind of natural, and I think mostly okay. But can we not just stop and celebrate the fact that there are two great players on the ice? And the NHL does not do a good job of handing out these individual matchups, which was an incredible individual matchup last night, Makar versus Hughes, right? So I think we should celebrate the fact that there are two great players on the ice. And just because someone is better than someone else, it doesn't mean that this other person is great. I think we've had, like, in terms of defense, the position, this is the best group of defensemen that has ever played this game, this best crop. Like, I think it's obviously with the amount of teams, it's deeper, but there's a lot of players that we put in the 5, 10, 15 spot that would possibly be in the top 2 or 3 defensemen in other eras if they played then. So,
yeah, there's a lot of obsession over, who's the best and why isn't this guy the best and why is this guy the best? And then, fan bases sniping at each other. I mean, it all seems pretty counterproductive. Just enjoy the hockey. I mean, I do agree. And then, of course, where people fit on the spectrum is based on, what are you using to measure the best? And or is a player in a hot streak or in a slump at the time? A lot of things that can change there. But broadly over their careers, I think it's pretty clear to say at this point, at least as far as Hughes versus Makar, that Makar is a step above and has accomplished way more.
But
Kev, I just want to your comment about how this could be the best crop of defensemen we've seen. I mean, I think they're well on their way, but when you say that, there was the era where we had Scott Stevens, Chris Pronger, Al McInnes, Nick Lidstrom, like there was Rob Blake. There's that era there. I think is the one that, at least for me, is the one that has the best. I think this group's close, is getting there, but I don't think they're quite there yet. But give it time. We'll see.
Yeah, you're right about that. Well, it's certainly, I wouldn't disagree that is up there. I mean, it's probably second on my list. And you're right, it's a great list. And one probably, arguably, the best defenseman who ever played the game, depending on your perspective in there as well, Nicholas Lidstrom. No offense to Bobby Orr, but for sure. But I'm just also wanting to just say, admire and enjoy the hockey just for what it is. And by the way, I'm sorry. Can we stop with expected goal for? Seriously, that's not the dumbest stat in analytics. The final goal, the final score of the game, expected goals 4-5, expected goal 4-3.
I like it as a sort of a barometer or a pulse check on how teams are playing. But it's not the end all be all that a lot of people make it out to be in fans, within fan bases and the media. So
yeah. And
the other thing with a lot of these stats, you can skew them left, right, up, down to find a way to make your player look better. Like, that's the way. There's so many stats out there that you can find a way to tell what story you want to tell.
Yeah.
Tyler, you're muted.
You're muted, Tyler.
Just got to go back to Kevin's rant there just a moment ago. A guy's really fired up when we're getting the sideways 2 versions. Kevin's in a mood tonight.
Yeah. Sometimes I haven't been on with you guys in a while.
I know. I missed you. In fact, I know we're on a tangent now. It's my fault. It's all my fault. But I think the last time we spoke was when I was in Vancouver, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I don't think we've been on the show together since then.
Yeah.
So. And that was great, by the way. But
yeah, just after I traffic copped. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Expected goals.
And before we move on here too,
show, I didn't think would be.
But before we move on to there, you mentioned about promoting matchups. There were some absolutely just awesome matchups, period, last night. not only you had Hughes versus Makar, you had the rematch from the first round last year between Boston and Florida. You had Vegas, Dallas. So like there's a lot. There's a few really good matchups last night. Like there was was it 14 games last night? Fantastic.
13. Yeah.
13.
There was Bedard versus Fantilli as well last night.
Yeah.
But of course, that was overshadowed by a couple of other players. But
yeah,
unfortunately, but yeah, no, it's just that's to me, to me is with that. Speaking of stories and skewing some stats, I think this leads us to JT Miller, who a lot of the Canuck fan base got really upset about this contract, and there's going to be a lot of people are looking at these stats and saying that he's still. Let's go back to the whole JT Miller debate at the time. There were people who were saying that JT Miller was not a 100-point player. He just was a player that got 100 points, and he wasn't worth the contract. And lo and behold, look who we see in the top 3 of scoring right now. JT Miller is hanging out at the top 3. Let's see. Let's look at the stats here. They pull those up, but he's in the top 3 here in points. I don't know if he's getting enough credit. Second in the league in points with 30 behind Quinn Hughes at 31. I don't think he's getting, quite frankly, I don't think he's getting enough credit in this market for the way that he's played.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, obviously Quinn Hughes is sort of grabbing most of the attention because of just how much of a step he seems to have taken. There's just the general success of the team is a big discussion on its own. But I don't know what it is. It's almost like Miller's just one of these guys. Like when he's feeling it, you just hope that stays as long as possible, and that's I think been there. It's not like he's suddenly gotten some newfound ability to play the game of hockey. I mean, it's working for him right now, and you hope it stays that way.
Yeah, I also think he mentioned this earlier. I think Rick Talk is the perfect coach for JT Miller, and it just they're cut from the same cloth, I think. And when Rick talks, JT listens, and you're seeing the results. That line, he's got chemistry with Brock Besser. They've started to throw Beauvillier up on that line as well, but Giuseppe's been playing well there as well, and that's been a line that's been good for a matchup, right? So I think he does deserve a lot of credit for what he's done this year. It's just hilarious because you talked about the contract was panned, the trade for him was panned too.
Oh yeah,
yep. There was people who were absolutely livid that the Canucks gave up a first-round pick for JT Miller.
I bet you if you really searched hard enough, you'd probably find some people still hung up on that. Maybe 2 of them, but yes,
he's been fantastic, and having the 2-headed monster down the middle with Petey and Miller is so huge. Mm-hmm. And the power play has been fantastic for the most part, and he's been a big part of that. And it's no longer. It feels like it's a lot more of a cohesive group now as well. So I think he deserves a lot of credit for what he's done and how he's played, and he's a big part of why the Canucks are where they're at right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. By the way, if you're interested, the player that was the first round pick that Tampa Bay got was Shakur Mukhamadullin. Can you imagine if Rick Dollywall had to say that name?
Well, we had a somewhat questionable.
You think you would have to say Phil Giuseppe pass? Say that again, Tyler.
I said we had a somewhat of a just rushed through the show. Phil DiGiuseppe a few minutes ago. So,
Yes, exactly. I just did it. Yeah. Yeah.
no, no, that guy.
It was me. It was me.
Hugo Anfeld was also part of that trade. Goaltender who was replacing Andre Vasilevsky and Marek Mazanek. So I
look. I just
that first round pick got traded again, right?
Yeah,
that first round pick was traded to New Jersey for Blake Coleman.
There you go.
Yeah, how horrible of Tampa Bay to do that. What did they get out of that? Jeez. Anyway, sorry. Got my snide hat on. I just think Sean, you mentioned in the chat that JT Miller is better than Elias Lindholm. I don't think there's a lot of Flame fans that would agree with you 1,000% right now, and I would agree with you even as I'm a huge fan of both of the players, and JT Miller is playing far better than Elias Lindholm right now, no question about it. And I know that this is going to be a controversial, unpopular opinion, but JT Miller is a guy, I'm not comfortable signing 8-year contracts, but it's a guy I do want on my team. That's absolutely the case, and I would try to pay the money for. I think you can win Stanley Cups with players like JT Miller. So I think the Canucks did and ultimately make the right decision here. So,
well, I mean, to just play the other side of the coin for a second, I mean, the New York Rangers and Tampa Bay Lightning, and both were good teams at the time, felt he was expendable. And perhaps, that has helped drive JT Miller to be the player that he is now. You just see that in his body language that I mean, everybody has a chip on their shoulder to some extent. Everybody in their various walks of life have been sort of told they're not good enough, but it seems extra with him. Like there's a real desire there, and I think when you get discarded a couple of times from some pretty strong teams, you would think that fire would be burning a little harder after.
Yeah, that's very fair. Fair. On the Canucks side, is there anything else that we need to talk about?
Not specifically. I mean, I haven't. Really
I just wanted to mention the
schedule.
Yeah, I just do want to mention that going back to Quinn Hughes, I think it's pretty awesome that he the stat of he's the first D-man since Orr to be the first player to 30 points in a season.
Yeah, no, that's
pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So that shows how good Quinn Hughes is playing right now.
Yeah, there's no question how phenomenal Quinn Hughes has been. No question. And it's just for Quinn, I think it's and as the year goes on and as the Canucks get into the playoffs, I have no doubt that he can maintain or keep a steady pace. It's when he does it, that's when he's going to start getting more of that notoriety that he's getting now. So I think it was Benning that signed Hughes, right? It wasn't all me. Yeah, I guess, Benning did a lot of horrible things. Signing Hughes to the contract at the time he did may not have been that bad of an idea there. That might have been some shrewd thinking on his part. I'm not that I'm here and I'm a Benning bro or anything, but signing him.
Just looking ahead to the Canucks schedule here. Tomorrow, again, another back-to-back coming up. Tomorrow at Seattle, another Ray Ferraro game. By the way, he's been awesome to have on Canucks broadcasts. Saturday at San Jose, Saturday at San Jose, and then they're back home to Anaheim on Tuesday, and then I believe they have Calgary after that. Vegas on November 30th. That's a home game, and then at Calgary on Hockey Night in Canada, December 2nd. So a run of divisional games here. Critical stretch here for the Canucks to pick up a bunch of points and solidify their position in the standings a little bit. And that one against Vegas, obviously, as far as a Canucks perspective, that's the game of the year there so far. It'll be fun seeing that one.
Yeah, that'll be a good game for sure.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if when Ray Ferraro calls games in Rogers Arena, is he going to be in the press box or down on the ice?
The one home game he did already with San Jose the other night, he was between the benches, and I was a little surprised to see that. I don't think we've ever seen that on a Canucks regional broadcast before. So um, it's good. What I really like about Ray as a hockey player myself is he's a forward, and you get that perspective as a forward. He's a guy that scored goals, and he was a guy that was yappy. He's very self-deprecating about that part of the game. So when you put him down there, you get that perspective on the game, and there was a lot of commentary from him during the game about guys saying this and that to each other, and that's something that we miss sometimes on Canucks broadcasts. So that part is good. He also had his hilarious story about the Atlanta bobblehead, and you'll have to find it. It's on Sportsnet has it on X.com there, and he joked about how they if they had found it sooner, the box would have been talking or something to that effect. Andrew Burnett making a joke about how yappy Ray was. So no, he's added a lot of fun to the broadcast, and obviously is credible as they get in the business. And he seems to be having a lot of fun doing it. That's really the biggest thing too. It's national games can be very produced and very stodgy, and you're not doing the same team night to night, and then to come and do just cover one team on a regional package. You're getting a more loosened up version of Ray, and his chemistry with Shorty's great, and it's making for a fun time in the absence of John Garrett. And now we'll tip our cap to Dave Tomlinson as well. He's been it's a voice we're used to hearing from the past with Shorty and him on the radio way back when, and I think he's taken a bit of time to sort of settle in the role. TV's a lot busier than a radio broadcast. There's a lot more going on in your ears. I think maybe he's taken a bit of time to get used to that. But the Canucks did all right with finding these two new guys to do their color on their TV broadcasts after Cheech stepped back.
Yep.
Yeah.
So last night during the Colorado game, one of the other storylines, and I know where you want to go, Tyler, and I want to take this one step further too. So Josh Manson cross-checks Brock Besser. They give him a 5 so they can review it. And then they reviewed it, and it became a 5. I got to be honest with you. I did not see it. I can accept that it was a penalty, sure. I didn't see it as a 5-minute, and where it's, I know that Sean is probably tired of this discussion, but this video review process, the Nashville Calgary game, there was Philip Forsberg. This was literally what Philip Forsberg did. I have my pen in my hand. He literally tossed the puck to a player, and it went in the net. And they did not determine that was a hand pass. I don't know what that is, but that looks like a hand pass to me. But I'm baffled of how this entire video review process is, the conclusions that they're coming through.
Well, that's partly why I dislike it. I don't know if Sean wants to go before I comment on it, but
yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be working, because there's still definitely calls that people are like, huh? Yeah. Even after going through it. But we're seeing that in multiple different sports too, multiple different leagues, where there is video review and review process and coaches challenges where you're still left miffed. And that's not what this should be. This should be cut and dry. You can look at it and go, okay, I could, or at least understand where the call came from.
Yeah. Usually a video review, expansion of video review results from some really egregious miss that's happened, especially in the playoffs, or I'm going to say cynically, to a bigger market team that's changed things considerably. And thus there's been a lot of attention about it. But what it was never intended to do was be this routine thing that's used to start splitting hairs. People are going to say, okay, Noble's the referee here, and he's just going to be this referee point of view. I just think it's doing a few things. One, it's holding up games, and Sean and we're on this all the time about the offside challenge, and it would just, like, if I had my choice, it would be gone altogether. But now to have a system in place where all the referees have to do is just call a major penalty, and then they get to go and look at it again, and they're doing this for judgment calls. I mean, so there's a slippery slope. How is this? Does this expand further? We don't know. I sure hope not. But the other thing is too is once you put them in front of the tablet, this is almost like the psychology of taking a multiple choice exam, or Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, the old game show, where if you don't know the answer right away, the longer you're standing there considering your options, it just becomes diminishing, I think. And I think the longer that they look at it and the more that they kind of kick it around amongst the two referees and whoever they're talking to, I think that gets them further away from what the correct call should be, or what they were likely to call without the review system. So I think it's just defeating itself. I just don't like the time it takes. I don't think people are satisfied with the outcomes. And then as far as, tradition and the human element of a referee on the fly in real time, judging whether something's an infraction or not from their perspective on the ice, we've really opened a bit of a door that I'm not sure we want to step through here, because now they're just going to the tablet and looking at it with different angles, and that's not how refereeing a hockey game is done, right? I mean, it's one thing for non-discretionary calls, even offsides, where you've got a line and the puck, right? Puck in the net or not in the net. There's a justification, I think, for using a video review system for the non-discretionary stuff, but to do judgment calls and then the time that's spent on it, and then you arrive at a conclusion that probably isn't even the right ruling in a lot of cases. What are we doing here? This bothers me, and it concerns me that it's going to expand. So that's why I wanted to rant about that.
Yeah, I can see them. I'm not saying I like this. I can see them getting to the point where calls in overtime in the playoffs, they start reviewing all of them before they're over, right? And heaven forbid.
Kev, are you saying like even just 2-minute liners?
Like heaven forbid, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup in overtime happens, and we're pausing after this celebration to make sure that this goal is an offside, and it is a long 20-minute debate, and it's this close to being offside or not. Like,
yeah, well, then there's the challenge over a missed stoppage part of the goal. You mentioned the hand pass example, or a high stick, or whatever. We had that last year in the playoffs. It went on for 10 minutes with the Oilers and the Kings over that possible high stick, and it was inconclusive.
Yeah, you had the Cale Makar offside goal a couple of years ago. You had, of course, the Blake Coleman goal, non-goal. Yeah, there has to be some sort of time limit on these.
I would favor that. I wish this was the case in baseball too. Some of those reviews go on for a period of time, and if you can't come up with the answer within a minute or so, they'd have to get the GMs together to decide what the right length of time is. But it can't be indefinite. And I think it's not just because of how long people are having to wait for the game to continue. I think the longer it goes, it actually sort of has an impact on whether they're
overthinking
judgment or not. Yeah, the overthinking part of it, exactly.
The only way that if you don't have a time limit that makes it worthwhile is if you have people players like Josh Manson acting in the penalty box like he did last night.
Well, that was
hilarious, great entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, I think it's just it's reached a point where we're starting to see the gremlins come out, and I think you're right, Tyler, and with that multiple choice test analogy. Yeah, the more you stare at it without any more information, the more you're going to overthink it.
Yeah. Well, and then the part I didn't really get into too much either is that if this is going to stay long term, I think over time what you're going to probably see with the officials is that a little bit of complacency will kick in as far as positioning and anticipating the play and their eye mechanics, what they're looking for as the play is going on. I mean, a lot of times people think, they see the referee's head pointed in one direction. Well, they might be keeping an eye on something over here at the same time too. There's certain things a game that flows nice. You kind of get used to this rhythm. You're just like just instinctively sort of, okay, the puck's gone there, but I got to keep an eye on these two guys on the follow through, and then the play goes over there, and then you get used to a certain rhythm of the game, and that's how you kind of pick out the infractions. But now you insert the video into this thing. I mean, over time, these guys might get a little complacent around some of that stuff. I don't like where this is heading. The reason for it, I understand why it came in, because there have been big mistakes that have been made in playoff context in the past, but that is just a minuscule percentage of all rulings that have to happen in hockey games over the course of a season or even a playoff run. And it was a knee-jerk move to bring it in, and I don't think it's yielding. I don't think it's achieving its intended purpose. I'll leave it at that.
So one of the other stories that happened this week is the revelation and the discussion about a possible another, and I feel ho-hum talking about this, but the possibility of an international tournament in 2025. Now, the fascinating thing about this is how many teams could be involved in this, and what team, of course, may not be involved in this, which is Russia. And the idea being proposed is I'm hearing is a 4-team tournament with Canada, U.S., Finland, and Sweden, and playing a series of games. Now, just for me, and Dan and I talked about this. This doesn't appeal to me at all. Like, if we're going to do World Cup, we should try to get as much of the world involved in this as possible. And I understand the complications around Russia. If you can't do it right, I just don't think you should do it.
Yeah,
other sports are doing it without Russia. It shouldn't matter. Within that, but all the other, not having Germany, not having Latvia, not having Czechia or Slovakia, like those countries, I think is a miss as well. But I also think that if you're there, this is a stepping stone to an actual World Cup. I think this is them going, okay, what are our two biggest rivalries that we can have play? Let's do that and grow it from there.
Yeah, that would make sense as to why they're proposing this particular format. That's why they're not describing it or using the words World Cup to describe it, because it's not that. I mean, if it's only 4 teams and you're excluding very, very prominent hockey nations from it, then it's not a World Cup. Now, as far as other sports go, the depth of the sport around the world, if you want to compare it to soccer, for example, if you don't have Russia or 1 or 2 other countries that are there, well, I mean, the World Cup's not an automatic for any team that every 4 years when that thing rolls around. I mean, Italy didn't make the last World Cup. The United States didn't make the one before that. So it's different to in that sport, you can replace a Russia with another very strong team. In hockey, like the World Junior Championship, it's still fun to watch, and it's still a great event for TSN and for the IIHF, but it is, in my opinion, not quite the same without the Russian team there. And in the NHL,
it's not, but
if your players are Russian, that's a big issue for them. So I don't know. I mean, I will watch it. It is a chance to see, Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby potentially playing on the same team. There's been a lot of talent turnover since the 2016 World Cup even, and then the Sochi Olympics before that. So there's going to be a chance to get Swedish, American, Finnish, and Canadian players on an international stage, and that will have its own level of interest. But it's obviously not the Olympic tournament, and it's not anything close to a World Cup of hockey from what we've seen in the past.
With the Russian players, my struggle with this is, I think you would want, you obviously would want a Vasilevsky, Ovechkin, and a number of these Russian players to play because they're part of a marquee. I don't think that you can go with. I mean, I talked about this with Dan. In one sense, you can't. I don't know if you can go with that name, Russia, but at the same time, I'm not a Russian hockey player, and I don't know how I would feel if I was asked to play a tournament but not be allowed to represent my country.
It's a very good point as well.
I just think the easiest way is just to do what the Olympics are doing, what FIFA are doing, just exclude them. Like it's until things are fit, until whatever so I don't know how to word this, but it's just I don't like this dancing around it and trying to say the Olympic athletes from Russia or whatever they called it for the last few times. I don't like that. I think
they're either in or they're out.
Like for me, I think the quote unquote right thing is just exclude them until things are resolved.
Yeah.
And we move on. Yeah, it's not the same, but to dig your heels in and say let's not do it until we can do it quote unquote right, which includes the players from Russia. No, I don't think that's not fair to. You're saying it's not fair to the Russian players. It's also not like if you're going to say let's not do it until we can do it quote unquote right. That's also not fair to players like McDavid, Makar, the Hughes brothers, the Kachuk brothers.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I want to jump in there because I think that there is, in terms of labor relations with the PA and the NHL, there is, I think, a bit of urgency to make that opportunity happen for some of those stars that haven't had it yet. Connor McDavid being obviously the biggest one of those examples, and getting to play internationally in best on best context is a very big deal for the players.
Well,
Kev, you said you're not. This doesn't appeal to you. You're not interested in a Canada versus U.S. 2 or 3 game series where you're getting McDavid, Makar on the same team. You're getting all the Hughes brothers, all the Kachuk brothers on the other side facing off against Canada.
That'd be pretty appealing, I think.
It is appealing, yeah. But here's the other aspect of that, and I think that's wonderful. But just take the Russian aspect out of it. Like Czechia, Slovakia, Germany, as mentioned. I mean, you don't think Leon Draisaitl wouldn't want to be a part of that tournament as well? And let's not forget some of the best hockey fans in the world, Latvia. And I think that's the other element that I think should be part of this. Yes, it's great. I would love the best on best. All of that would be great. But that underlying story of the fan bases and how they cheer and the culture aspects of it, I think is also important as well. That's what I want to add. I mean, yes, you can, if you want to take Russia out of it, fine. But as long as you're adding everybody else that has a hockey team in it, then it's okay. Then as long as there's enough teams to say, let's have a World Cup and let's do it. I'm not interested in a Team Europe. I don't think anybody is interested in the North American.
Nobody's putting that on the table. I think
So Then
again, though, I mean, you look at the names on that team. Even today, is some pretty good NHL talent there. But yeah, it's this kind of leads me to another point. I'm glad you brought up Latvia. If the NHL down the road and they're looking at 2028 as a target for a World Cup of hockey, there's got to be some qualification process for like the 8th team or the 7th and 8th teams in it, right? You can't just arbitrarily pick teams. I know in, what was it, 04 was the previous one they had. I think it was Slovakia and Germany were the two instead of North America and Europe that were in the 2016 version. And they were for the lack of a better description, filler at the time to get it to be an 8-team tournament. But if you actually have some kind of a pre-qualifying process in the lead up to it, that is a bit complicated. Maybe you make that happen in the pre-season. I don't know when you would do that. I don't know. You'd have to maybe do that somewhere in the summertime, I guess. But that would sort of start piquing some interest in it, and then whichever team gets there is. It would enhance the whole the whole build up to it, but also make it more legitimate, I think.
Unfortunately, I think one of the big holdups here is that this is an NHL sort of spearheaded thing.
Yeah,
and they want NHL players. They don't want there as much as possible. They don't want a team full of players from Europe.
Yeah.
That's not what they're interested in. And I think for the NHL, that is totally fair. So I think it's not. We can yell and scream about the NHL not doing this right, but I think this also we need to start talking about the double IHF and figuring out how to that they need to take a bigger stab at this and trying to find a way to make it so that, because the World Championships are fine, like they're all right, but that's not best on best.
No, it's not.
And we haven't had best on best in way too long. We were supposed to have it in freaking, was it 2022, and didn't get it.
Yeah.
But I just think it's not. We're at this point, we're not going to get, I think, what you're wanting, Kevin, in an ideal world where we're getting like a true World Cup. But if I am very, very interested to see a 2 or 3 game series between Canada and the U.S. I'm very interested to see Jack Hughes, Quinn Hughes, the Kachuk brothers, all on one team. Then you've got McCarr, McKinnon, Crosby, McDavid, like just on the other team. Who's going to be in net for Canada? I'm terrified to know.
I know. I asked my friends this. I've asked my brother this, and we're all. It's a pause that comes after. I was like, okay, let's say there's NHL participation in 2026 at the Olympics. Who are Canada's goalies? And the silence is deafening. It's a major concern. I know that's almost a topic for another day, but it is. I mean, I guess it's Aiden Hill, Carter Hart, and Jordan Binnington right now. But it's not like before.
Can I put a vote in for Mackenzie Blackwood? I know that he's getting shelled in San Jose, but
yeah, I mean, it used to be
in 2026, Kev. There's a goalie that you were screaming to high heavens about being a really good goaltender. I mean, please, dear God, Buffalo, don't screw him up. Devin Levi, he's in 2026. That could be him.
Yeah.
But next year could that be him as well? That might be a bit quick.
The first two were obvious. It was more who's the third goalie going to be, but now we're not even sure who any of the three will be. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's fat. That's fat. I mean, it could be even Thomas Milic could be in that conversation. Seriously, I know he's an AHL goalie right now, but I think he's in the conversation seriously, which is scary for Canada.
Yeah.
Okay, Sean, you put this as the one last question, but I have one last question. So I'm wondering if I could use the one last question and we can just discuss this quickly as a topic, because I do think that your question is an interesting topic. Okay. Which is, should the NHL play games on U.S. Thanksgiving?
Well, I mean, they shouldn't be worried about the ratings, but I don't blame.
Well, you're going to lose them
the
anyway.
Networks. Yeah, I don't blame the networks for not wanting to compete against the NFL. It's an animal, and you're never going to win against the NFL. You're just going to hope to just attract some eyeballs. And what's one day, right? I don't think they have to. I wouldn't mind it if they did, but I don't know. Sean?
I don't think they should. I think it's let NFL have it. It's tradition. Even in Canada, we know that there's the Thanksgiving Day games. And you sit and watch those. It's not like I don't think it's not a winnable battle. And it's not even just the networks too. Do you think the American teams want to have a game on this Thursday? No, they don't.
No,
they barely want that. One of the reasons why they want we've seen a later start to the season is because American teams want more games later in winter when there's less college football, there's less all that. Yeah, less competition for that money.
Yeah,
I think it's fine the way it is. Like, it still sucks that we don't have a hockey tonight, but And I think the biggest one is like, why wasn't there hockey on Tuesday? That's the stupid one.
Well,
That was more of an
figure it
anomaly
out.
with building
yeah.
availability.
There was only 2 buildings available, which was Calgary and Arizona, and Arizona would have had to play 4 games in 5 nights if they were playing Tuesday. So they ultimately.
I mean, that to me, that's a microscopic look at it. Figure it out. You're like, he's got these schedules and all that. Figure it out.
Yeah.
You sent all these Canadian teams on
They
American
could have
road
come up
trips.
with one game nationally
Yeah.
televised. I don't know.
Yeah, I do think they should have, but I get that was the reason. I'm not saying it's a good reason. That was the reason.
Well, I know the reason. It's stupid.
Yeah. Just one last thing. As far as TV broadcasting and the American context, one thing that worked a little bit better in the past with linking hockey to Thanksgiving was NBC. NBC carrying the primetime NFL game on Thanksgiving night could promote their hockey coverage the next day. There was more, that synergy worked better. That doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it's ESPN and TNT that have the rights, and they don't have any involvement in Thanksgiving football. So,
I wonder if do you think at some point we see NHL games on Christmas, or do they leave that for the NBA?
Now that the NFL's gone to Christmas as well as the NBA, I don't see that happening. No. And the other thing is too is
that'll be a
the
CBA.
players really like that right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the NBA and NHLPA pushes back.
Yeah.
This is the one last question that I have, and if you're the Edmonton Oilers and you're in the position that you are now, and your star player is clearly not 100%, do you make a desperate Tyler, I'm using your multiple choice example for earlier, make a desperate bunch of trades in hopes that you can get back into this, or B, do you rest McDavid, get him out of the lineup and get him 100% healthy and punt the ball into next season?
I think they've got a punt on this season. I know people don't want to hear that. Kind of goes back to our discussion about the pulse check at American Thanksgiving. I mean, who sees the Oilers turning this thing around? Realistically, like really be honest with yourself. If you're an Oilers fan, do you see this thing turning around? There just aren't deals to be made that are going to make a huge impact to make that happen quickly. Now, as far as shutting down McDavid and sitting him, no.
I'm not saying benching him, but he's clearly injured.
I know what you're referring to, but I still think as long as you're not affecting his long-term career health, a 75% McDavid is still better than a lot of players. So it's going to be hard to have that happen. You're really straining relations with the player too if you decide to tell him that he's not going to play when he feels like he can play. That would have to be very much a joint decision between the club and McDavid. Also, let's talk about money. How many people are going to go watch the Oilers if McDavid's not playing? So that's just the reality of the business.
It's a very, very tough decision. I think at this point you still have to fight. I'm not saying go off and I'm going to take option C and say that I don't think you need to necessarily go off and make a bunch of desperate trades. I think you need to be searching for what you can find and see if there's something out there. And maybe you do have to do that with a little bit of desperation, like that good desperation you see when teams play desperate hockey in the playoffs and all that. Maybe the better term is urgency. Go out there with urgency, and maybe you may have to take a bit of a gamble here and there with a move, but they have to be educated gambles. They have to be not just like, well, I hope this works. But I don't think it's time to punt till next season. Not yet. Now, if the Oilers are still sort of floundering, say, coming out of the Christmas break, that's when you start having those discussions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
This isn't. We'll talk. Sorry, Kev, but I think that this isn't a video game. This isn't you're playing NHL, whatever year you're playing, where you can just make that decision and go, well, my team sucks. I'm going to sell, and all that. You still have sponsors to appease. You still have season ticket holders to appease. You still have people to attract to games. You still have to try and sell that you're pushing hard. And I think that's part of the discussion in with all that. And so I think it's not time to punt. It's time. They still have to be at least putting the right foot forwards and still fighting to try and get back into it.
I'm not saying they have to sell per se, like how we talk traditionally about selling, but to me, they're in a position where if they make like this desperate trade that they're. I mean, if it's a desperation trade to get a goalie, it could set this franchise back again, right?
Oh, yeah,
So I do think you have to be very thoughtful in what you're doing. It's not kicking time. It's 3rd and 25 though.
I'm with you, Kevin. I wouldn't favor the idea of making a bad deal in the faint hope of making the playoffs this season and then setting yourself back the next year or two. That would be the wrong decision as well. It's clever that Sean says option C because yes, there are a lot of other reasons that they got to continue to try and push and keep the fans happy, keep the sponsors happy, keep the owner happy, keep Connor McDavid happy. Like there's all those things are factors.
But the other thing is, if things go this way, how happy are McDavid and Draisaitl going to be going forward?
My comment on that is that they need to be part of the solution, and they've got their own issues with their game right now.
Yeah, they are not above criticism. I mean, until they figure out that there's a hockey game to be played on the other side of the blue line, the Oilers are going nowhere.
Yeah,
it's that fact. Just one more quick thing. Thoughts to Andy Moog. Speaking of the Olympics. Speaking of the Oilers, he was someone posted on Instagram that he has cancer. He's been diagnosed with cancer. Tweeted by Gregory Ballack. It was his friend Mike Vaughn that did that. So some thoughts to Andy Moog and his journey going forward. And he played in the 1988 Olympics. We had a discussion at work about that a couple nights ago. It's interesting. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thoughts to him and his family and friends.
You bet.
All right. Well, let's leave it there. How do we follow everyone?
I am Bearded Canuck 03 on the social medias.
And you can follow me on x.com, formerly known as Twitter, at Tnoble, Tnoble. I'm
on the social medias, including the Threads on KEVOLE, and Threads is getting a little busy. It's starting to get hoppy. There's also a lot of porn sites there, but anyway, let's leave that alone. I'm telling you.
It's good that everybody knows that beforehand.
Yeah, just so you know. There's also.
I mean, it's not much different than X these days, so.
Yeah, it's true. Is this Shifts and Pucks After Dark now? Or?
Yeah. Speaking of, shout out to Devin Gordhouse09, who made an amazing attempt to get on with us with Dan, but got caught out as he was selling peelers at the off in Banff. But shout out Chris Schneids, SCHNEIDZ. Fireside Chat will be back recording on Saturday, talking Sunday, talking more about Flames. We will be back next week having our Canucks podcast, having our Flames podcast, talking all things hockey. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.